everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Demystified. Well, this is not another episode. This is a very, very special edition. We have completed season 1, wherein we released 14 episodes, and we are working on season 2. This one is a special episode because we have a very, very eminent author, Prashant, who has joined us for this discussion. And before I request Vikesh to introduce him, let me quickly give introduction about myself. I had marketing for Kangaroo Group and about 20 years of experience in marketing. I started this initiative with Vikesh for the benefit of marketeers. Vikesh is, other than being a co-host on this channel, he is also an eminent marketeer with about more than 20 years of experience. He has co-founded Oakbridge Publishing and is into publishing business for quite some time. Vikesh, I will request you to introduce Prashant to all of us.
Thank you, Harpreet. Hello, everyone. Prashant Kumar doesn't really need an introduction. He's the co-founder of Entropia, a next-gen marketing services company, which is now a part of Accenture. Entropia has been a pioneer in the area of marketing in the Industry 4.0 era. In 2020, Entropia was recognized as the third fastest growing large agency in the world by Adweek, New York. And earlier, Prashant served as President Asia World Markets at IPG Media Brands. He has been on the juries of the prestigious Cannes Lions and Crystal Festival, France, and Lynx Festival, Dubai. He was also a speaker at the Digital Marketing Expo, Germany, and Global Festival of Media, Rome. He's been interviewed by the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg. And in 2019, the International Advertising Association, IAA, recognized him as one of the 5 digital marketing thought leaders globally. He's an alumnus of St. Stephen's College, Delhi, and MICA Ahmedabad, and Harvard Business School. He's also the author of a recently published book, Made in Future. So with that, Prashant, I would like to welcome you. Thank you so much for considering our request to be on the show today. It's truly a pleasure having you with us.
It's my joy. Thank you, Vikesh. And thank you, ma'am Harpreet.
Sure.
Great.
Thank you so much. Like you said, it's an honor to have you on board for this discussion.
My pleasure.
Excellent.
Glad to be here.
So we'll get started. There are a lot of questions that we want to ask Prashant, but there's only so much that we can package, within 1 or 2 episodes. I'll start. We'll request Prashant to tell us about his journey in marketing. Prashant, how did you get started, and when did you realize that this is exactly what you wanted to do? Perhaps you got that eureka, feeling that yes, this is something that I would really excel in.
So, a sense of control over our lives is very important to many of us. Yet life happens in very funny ways sometimes. I remember when I was in class 8th in Sainik School, Tilaya, a boarding school, we had a school fete, and some of us decided to set up a noodles stall, like Maggie noodles you make and sell. What was interesting was that I wanted to advertise that stall, and I wanted to be the most prominent stall in the entire school fete. So I went to a pharmacy shop and I brought these big cartons, like as big as I could find. And I created a Mr. Noodle out of that by, stacking them up and putting one carton as the head, and then having some cartons coming out as the arms and stuff like that. And that, on the day of the fete, was actually the most prominent thing in the fete. And it was very visible from everywhere. It was very different. A lot of people looked at it and thought it was very funny. And we had really limited resources. I mean, all we had was, like, in those days, we used to get pocket money of $20. So we couldn't do much. And then in retrospect, I thought it was really, really interesting that I did that, because I didn't even know that an ad industry exists or a marketing industry exists. I didn't know what marketing means at that time. Growing up as a Bihari boy in a boarding school far away, I mean, we didn't know that, what is MBA and what is marketing and all that. So it's funny that I find myself in this industry for life. But the actual conscious orientation started, I think, in college. So I'm from St. Stephen's College. after going to the college, it dawned upon me the luminaries who have come out of Stevens, and they are in ad industry or in media industry and so on and so forth. So somewhere in Stevens, I think I developed a flair for doing something different. So not being a mainstream MBA or doing a normal business management or accounting. And Arthur Andersen, I remember, had come to our college as well. Funny, I'm in Arthur Andersen right now. I mean, Accenture was Arthur Andersen then. So there, I decided that I must do something different. So it could either mean journalism or getting into advertising at that time. Advertising paid better at that time because the news channels of today had not yet arrived. Even Star Plus was not, like Kyuki Saas and all had not arrived on the scene. It was still the ZTV $5,000 per episode kind of era. So I remember going to Outlook editor Yuvraj Gimire for an internship. I was hoping to become a journalist or something. Finally, I joined Mica. Once I arrived at Mica, that is where I think I realized that I'm really made for the creative industry. It doesn't have to be marketing, but a creative industry. And number one, the wonders of creativity and what it can do to the world in the larger scheme of things as well. The other thing was the realization that I was a very whole brain person. My right brain and left brain, both were strong. So even in college, I used to do a lot of debates and used to write, and I was the editor-in-chief of the St. Stephen's College yearbook and, edited Stephanian. But yet I was in maths honors, so in Mica, I realized that I understood how econometric modeling happens as much as I could think about insights into the minds of people and stuff like that. So that self-awareness that I was a whole brain person sort of tangified the idea that probably I'm very well suited for the world of marketing. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Right. So you have, since this is how your journey started, and you have worked with so many global and regional brands throughout your career, it will be very interesting to know if you can share some of the challenges which you face. Like you said that you were from a science background, but you did realize that, creativity is your forte. But what were the challenges which you faced when you worked with these brands? And then how did you overcome them?
So, well, the biggest challenges with big brands that are cross-cultural, global, are actually pretty consistent. So, for instance, the single largest creative challenge in marketing is often that you have this brand, let's say, defined in America, and then it has to travel across so many different cultures, so many different demographic norms, so many different mindsets, the customer context. How do you translate that brand and make it as relatable in the local cultural milieu is probably the single largest challenge. I still remember one of the first brands that I worked on was the P&G brand called Hugo Boss. It was actually P&G Fine Fragrances. They had just acquired the company, and they decided to launch Hugo Boss in India. And this is Hugo Boss in like 2000. And you can imagine in 2000, in India, people didn't buy expensive perfumes. You know what I mean? I mean, nobody had heard about these brands. And Hugo Boss in the West, in Europe, in US, is for this particular variant of Hugo Boss was for professional women. But professional women in India at that time, number one, those who could afford something like Hugo Boss perfume were a very, very small segment. And we were really faced with the challenge how to bring that brand to the marketplace in a way that could succeed. And we realized that professional women were too small a segment at that time to sustain the success. So it was decided that even though as a creative manifestation, it must remain true to its global identity. In India, actually, we are going to target all those wives of rich stockbrokers and rich traders and businessmen and builders and all these guys in places like Maharashtra and Gujarat and Punjab and so all those places. Now that posed a very unique challenge, a brand that's designed for highly educated, very, very world-class English-speaking women. How will a Gujarati wife who is maybe, not that educated, but her husband has a lot of cash, how will she relate to that, right? So this very aptly signifies the single largest challenge that global brands have. The other challenge, which actually again plagues many, many brands, and so many global brands lose their magic because they are not able to navigate this challenge successfully, is creative risk. The bigger the brand is, more you have to lose, right? And hence, what organizations typically tend to do is they will put layers upon layers of approval. And, after a while, more people say no than those who want to make things happen, make things that are different, that will take the brand forward, that will evolve the brand, that will expand its catchment area. You have more naysayers than those who are saying, hey, I believe in it and I'm going to support it. And let's do this audacious, differentiating, breakthrough idea or execution, because I believe this will strengthen the brand and expand the brand. So the big challenge is, how do you harness the champions of new ideas while managing the naysayers? So I'm sure everybody in the creative community will identify this challenge. Yeah. So these are two typical big challenges.
So how did you overcome these?
Well, obviously, coming up with an idea is easy. Selling that idea through is a lot more difficult, as any marketing professional will tell you. Managing the constituencies around idea, first within your creative agency side, then among the marketers, then among the guys who are not marketing people, like the CEO and the CFO. They might be involved in the approval process, the procurement guys. How do you manage the constituency around the idea is actually a tougher challenge than coming up with an idea. All right. So if you are in the creative business, you will realize that ideas are aplenty. How do you curate, craft, and create the business case to get it through, to get it approved, get it the funding, is a trickier challenge. And most of the senior leaders end up doing that effectively. So there are ways, and in a nutshell, ultimately, let's say a CEO may not support an audacious idea, but if he is convinced, if he is shown the path from that audacity to how it creates customer value, a better image in the minds of the people, which in turn will drive preference at that final moment of truth, when the guy has to pick up the brand over other brands. If you can establish that bridge in a very clear and systematic way, I won't use the word rigorous, because ideally they will want to have financial numbers behind it, but it's not always possible, especially for upper funnel campaigns. To create that bridge is a skill that you manage to cultivate. And it's not that different, in fact, in other industries as well. Like if you are a Hollywood producer and you are pitching your idea to financiers or to even your own studio, you have got to be able to connect it to the final numbers, right? So in every creative business, that would be the case, I'm sure. When people come up with new product design ideas, they have to pitch it to the CEO and CFO and make the business case for why this design intervention will change the game of numbers. So yeah, so that's a acquired skill over time. But if you believe in the ideas and you understand that, I think Steve Jobs put it very well when he said, real artists ship. Meaning that we are not in Picasso business, we are in commercial arts. The business case for it, the reason we exist is because the business gets a delta because of what we do. So that delta can never be forgotten. So I think in the book, Made in Future, which Vikesh showed earlier, I have spoken about the EBT triangle. So E stands for equity, B stands for bottleneck, and T stands for target. So a creative idea is a creative idea only if it dials up the brand equity, is in line with it and strengthens it, if it's relevant to the target audience that we are trying to convert, and if it addresses the bottleneck that we are trying to solve, the specific problem in the customer journey that we are trying to solve. If it dials these three axes, then only it has the merits to qualify as a creative idea. And I mean, if you look at the user-generated content space for the last 20 years, I mean, ideas are aplenty, right? And in fact, the best ideas are conceived by people out there on the streets. Somebody came up with something wacky and billion people are watching it every day. But the reason why UGC has not been able to kill the world of marketing, in fact, it has only strengthened it, I think, is because that EBT triangle is not easy to find.
Right.
Yeah, very well put, Prashant. Thank you so much. I think it's a great framework. It's a great model to refer to. And I think we've all done it, but the kind of templates and the models and frameworks that you've given in the book make it far easy to be able to relate experiences and situations.
Yeah.
What we actually need to do. Wherever there are gaps, it helps us bridge those gaps as well. So
thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so moving on, Prashant, you worked with leading agencies throughout your careers before you started Entropia. Could you tell us about some of the most important and memorable, experiences or lessons that you've had with these agencies?
Well, to me, the most important lesson as a practitioner is that if you give your 100%, that shows up in the work that comes out of you. So, well, in our previous company, I had created this code, which was CLICK, CLICK, courage, love, imagination, collegiality, and knowledge. And this I'm referring specifically to marketing industry, because industry to industry, those value systems may differ. So, and to the best of my abilities, I try to personify those values. So courage, you have to be fearless. If you are in the creative business and you are not fearless, you're not willing to bet your credibility on something that you truly believe in, then you should not be in this business. Whether you are a marketer or a agency side guy, this is very, very crucial. All right. And this could stretch to any other creative industry as well. So then the second thing is love. You got to believe in what you do, right? That passion that shows up, that sincerity, that commitment to be an insider to the brand and think for the brand all the time. Put yourself in the shoes of the target audience that you are trying to influence. There's a beautiful line which says that if you want to catch a fish, think like a fish. So it's really funny when for instance, back in 2003, when I started working on Coca-Cola business, I actually felt that I was getting younger and younger because Coca-Cola was targeting 18 to 24-year-olds. And so that passion, that love for what you do is very crucial. The third thing is imagination. Of course, you have to be imaginative. We get paid for that, to be different. Collegiality, in order to have that atmosphere, that context, where people can come up with ideas, fearless ideas, freely, without constraint. It is important that there is a certain, the culture is collegial. It's not a very spaced out, too reserved, too precious, and, a stuffy culture. And finally, knowledge, meaning that I'm a very strong believer that imagination has to be built on the infrastructure of knowledge. Your understanding of the category, your understanding of people, that requires tremendous research. A lot of creative people these days, I find them to be very lazy. A lot of marketers, I would find them to be very lazy, which always creates the risk of making marketing a shallow and facile profession. I believe that a deep understanding and knowledge and research of what's going on in people's mind, what's going on in the marketplace, what's going on in the culture and competitive arena really makes for a great marketer. So yeah, courage, love, imagination, collegiality, and knowledge. I mean, it makes up for a click acronym.
Yeah, I'm sure it clicks with everyone. Yeah.
Yes, clicks. And in many industries actually, but for our industry, which is the soul is creativity, because marketing without creativity, as I've said in the book, is sales with a Photoshop, So yeah, because everything that you do in marketing, if you break it apart into component parts, it can be done by somebody else better. It can be done by, part of it can be done by sales better, part of it can be done by finance better, part of it can be done by the CTO organization better. So the way you find the true place for marketing is by bringing all these things together and building it around that powerful concept called ideas that will get you a better share of people's mental real estate. So that should never be forgotten.
Sure. So I think this is a very interesting acronym, and not only in marketing, it is applicable, I think, elsewhere, everywhere, in fact, I would say. So moving on, can you share some interesting anecdotes or interesting stories from your agency and entrepreneurial experience that you're particularly proud of, or that you can recollect and you would want the audience to know?
Well, there have been several things I could speak about. I think when I was CEO of IPG Media Brands in Malaysia, it was one of the smallest outfits in the industry. And then we became the second largest in the industry over the next 7 years. But more interesting is, and not just second largest, we were also the #1 agency office in the world out of some 900 offices that are ranked by RECMA Paris. So, which was unprecedented for an Asian office. In fact, we were the only one in top 5, and we were at #1. But more interesting, especially for the listeners, is how did that happen? And given that point of time, where I saw differentiation is on 2 key axes. #1 was putting strategic planning, putting strategic thinking at the heart, so that it is not just about executing stuff, but actually being able to relate the solution that we come up with a business's genuine problems. All right. So that bridging of the genuine problems of a business with how we lay out the whole strategic plan became one key differentiator. But eventually, the biggest differentiator became bringing the future of marketing to clients. So at that, of course, the future itself evolves, right? So at that time, we were the first ones to integrate search marketing into the normal marketing plans, social marketing, programmatic, e-commerce at that time was still relatively early. I mean, nowadays, everybody has a D2C play and everybody has a marketplace strategy. In those days, rare ones had. So that ability to lead the marketing companies in terms of next generation thought leadership, next generation opportunities for creating value for people, for connecting with people, differentiated us. So that is a journey that I'm very proud of. And later on, we replicated that for Entropia. Of course, by then, the marketplace itself had moved. So Entropia was a pioneer in this part of the world in terms of marketing 4.0. How do you apply the industry 4.0 technologies like extended reality, AI, blockchain, IoT, these four specifically, because we felt that these four more directly relate to the customer experience. How do you apply that to marketing, to demand creation? How do we look at the demand chain and think about those 7 intervention points for these technologies to create extra value, to raise the game for marketers? So towards that, I mean, we launched Entropia Extended Reality about 5 years back, and it became the largest extended reality studio in the region. Nowadays, they call it Metaverse. We used to call it XR in those days. And even today, as a part of Accenture, our Metaverse team is doing some really, really path-breaking work across Southeast Asia, but also across Japan. We are doing some projects in India. We are doing some projects in US. So and that's something we are really proud of. We are creating the future, a future that we always don't know what to expect. We only have our extrapolations based on what we know right now. But each event that an event like ChatGPT-4 suddenly brings forward that future by several years. An event like COVID brought forward that future by several years, right? Some people say that a decade's progress was made within 2 years. So yeah, we are very proud of what we did we have been doing in the extended reality space, the metaverse space, if you may call it.
Right.
Wow, that's quite interesting, Prashant. Thank you so much for all the wonderful experiences that you shared with us. We've talked a lot about the good part, the success, right? How about a time or a situation where things did not really go as well as you intended them to? And how did you then handle that situation, and what did you learn from that experience? If you could just narrate 1 or 2 such instances.
Sure. So I mean, there are various ways to answer this question. One is as a leader of people.
Yeah.
I had thousands of people in my Asian organization. Those are relatively more complex. But let me relate a relatively simple example, which actually happened in India. And I don't want to name the brand. It happened relatively early in my career. So we had a detergent brand.
Okay.
And it was a premium detergent brand. And our team decided that, and client agreed that we needed to focus on washing machine owners. And because that commitment was so clear in our heads that we have to focus on washing machine owners. In those days, very few washing machine owners did not have cable and satellite. Means cable and satellite penetration was still probably 20%, 25%. But if somebody had washing machine, that means they definitely had cable and satellite. And as a result, what we decided is, we said we will only advertise to cable and satellite households. So we went completely off the non-CNS households, which would be like, in those days, it used to be basically Doordarshan, all the different feeds and stuff like that. And that was a wrong decision. Because it's one thing to focus. It's another thing to completely black out a vast segment of the population. You can imagine 80% of the country was not seeing our ads.
Right.
Months after months after months. Right. What we should have done is we should have gone with lower weightage.
Right.
But let's say if the cable and satellite households are seeing us 5 times a week, maybe those guys see us only thrice or once. But to go completely off was completely wrong. But that mistake happened. And it very quickly, within 3 to 6 months, it sort of started showing up in market shares very, very clearly. A lot of time, marketing impacts are not that obvious, but that was one case where it was very obvious. And it took us, I think, more than a year to recover that position. Yeah, but we acted on it. We fixed that problem. What I think was really remarkable is the diagnosis was pretty swift. Our action was pretty decisive. So we still managed to recover that. But yeah, mistakes are made. Not individual mistakes usually. I mean, I was the junior most guy on the team,
But I think that is a part of us growing as professionals, right? We learn from these experiences, and that's what make us holistic as professional.
yeah, absolutely. I think they mature you and they teach you that maths is not the whole answer. You
Yeah.
know that. Yeah.
True. All right. So, so on that note, I think we should close this first part of the special edition episode with Prashant Kumar. This was largely around getting to know about how did Prashant get initiated in marketing, early experiences, and some of the key challenges and successes. In part 2, we are going to talk more about the future of marketing. And what does this new future with emerging technologies, changing lifestyles means for a marketer? So keep waiting. Episode 2 will be coming out soon.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.